Jake Harrison looked out the window of the mining station and saw something that made his heart stop. 3 massive ships hung in space like dark mountains against the stars. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each one could hold 100 cities inside it. "Commander Harrison, you need to see this," called out Pete Johnson from the radar station. His voice shook with fear and excitement. These ships just appeared out of nowhere. 1 second empty space, the next second they were there. Jake walked over to the screens. The mining station Kepler 438b was small compared to these giant ships. It looked like a tiny bug next to 3 elephants. Jake had been in charge of this mining operation for 2 years. They were far from Earth, digging for rare metals on a dead planet. Now something had found them. "Send a message to Earth," Jake said. "Tell them we have visitors." Before Pete could answer, all the screens in the station lit up with a strange blue light. A voice spoke in perfect English, but it sounded cold and distant like winter wind. "Small creatures of the 3rd planet, we are the Zephyrians. We come in peace to study your primitive species." The screens showed a tall, thin being with silver skin and large black eyes. It wore robes that seemed to move like water. Behind it, Jake could see a room full of floating crystals and walls made of light. "I am High Curator Veltash," the being said. "We have traveled from the center of the galaxy to catalog new life forms. Your species appears to be very young and simple." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Commander Jake Harrison. We welcome peaceful contact. We have much to learn from each other." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Learn from each other? Small human, your people still burn chemicals to fly between worlds. You have barely learned to split atoms. We have been traveling the stars for 50,000 of your years." Dr. Lisa Carter, the station's science officer, joined Jake at the communication panel. She was a small woman with bright eyes who loved learning about new things. "We may be young, but we're eager to grow and understand the universe." Veltash looked at her like she was an interesting insect. "Your eagerness is quaint. We have scanned your technology. Chemical rockets, basic fusion reactors, simple computers. These are tools our children played with thousands of years ago." More Zephyrians appeared on the screen. They whispered to each other in their own language, pointing at the humans and making gestures that clearly meant they thought humans were funny or stupid. "Your mathematics," said another Zephyrian, "are at the level of what we call baby thinking. Your physics understanding is like a child playing with blocks." Jake felt his face turn red with anger, but he kept his voice calm. "We may not be as advanced as you, but we've survived and grown for thousands of years. We've learned to work together and solve problems." "Yes, like insects in a hive," Veltash said. "Very impressive for such a simple species. But you must understand your place in the galaxy now. You are not ready to join the community of advanced races." Lisa stepped closer to the screen. "What does that mean for us?" "It means you will stay in your home system," Veltash explained. "We will mark your star as a protected zone for developing species. Think of it as a nature preserve. You may continue to live and grow, but you may not travel beyond your son's influence." The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Humans had just started to explore space. They had dreams of reaching other stars, finding new worlds, meeting other life forms. Now these aliens wanted to lock them in their own backyard, like children, who couldn't be trusted to cross the street. "You can't do that," Jake said. "We have rights. We have the freedom to explore and learn." "Rights?" Veltash tilted his head. "Small human, rights are earned through advancement and wisdom. Your species is barely past throwing rocks at each other. In our eyes, you are like smart animals. We protect animals from themselves." Other humans on the station gathered around. The communication panel Jake could see the fear and anger in their faces. Mary Thompson, the engineer, clenched her fists. Bob Williams, the medical officer, looked like he wanted to argue. They were all good people who had worked hard to reach the stars. "We've seen many species like yours," another Zephyrian said. "Most destroy themselves before they learn to travel between stars. The few that survive usually need thousands more years to become truly civilized." "But we are civilized," Lisa protested. "We have art, music, literature. We care for each other. We try to solve our problems with words instead of violence." "How sweet," Veltosh said in a tone that made it clear he thought humans were like cute pets. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have learned real science and grown beyond your primitive ways, we will check on you again." The screen started to fade. "We will leave monitoring devices around your system," Veltosh said. "Do not try to leave, or we will have to take stronger action to protect you from yourselves. Goodbye, little humans." The connection ended. The station fell into silence. Jake looked around at his team. These were some of the best and brightest humans alive. They had traveled farther from Earth than anyone before them. They had solved impossible problems and built amazing things. But to the Zephyrians, they were nothing more than smart animals. "Commander," Pete said quietly, "what do we do now?" Jake stared out at 3 massive ships. They hung in space, like silent judges, deciding humanity's fate without caring what humans wanted. But something burned in Jake's chest. It wasn't just anger or hurt pride. It was the same feeling that had driven humans to climb mountains, cross oceans, and reach for the stars. "We keep working," Jake said. "We learn everything we can, and we prove them wrong." He didn't know how they would do it. The Zephyrians had technology that seemed like magic, but humans had something too. They had the drive to push forward, even when everyone said it was impossible. They had the stubborn refusal to give up when things looked hopeless. The alien ships began to move away, but Jake knew they would be watching. Somewhere out there, humanity's future was being decided by beings who saw them as primitive children. But Jake had a feeling that the Zephyrians didn't understand humans as well as they thought they did. The stars still called to humanity, and humans had never been good at staying where others told them to stay. Dr. Ben Rodriguez rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. The numbers still didn't make sense. He had been working in the hidden research lab on Europa for 6 months, trying to make human communication signals reach farther into space. The lab was secret because the Zephyrians had forbidden humans from sending messages beyond their solar system. "Still working late, Ben?" asked Dr. Carol Martinez as she walked into the lab. She was the chief engineer and Ben's closest friend. "On the ice moon." "I can't figure this out," Ben said, pointing at the screen. "Every time I boost the quantum field around our communication array, I get these weird patterns. They look almost like ... music." Carol looked at the wavy lines on the screen. "Music from outer space?" "Not from space," Ben said. "From the quantum field itself. It's like the field is singing when human brain waves pass through it." For months, Ben had been working on a project to make human voices travel faster than light. The Zephyrians used something called quantum communication, but they said humans were too primitive to understand it. Ben wanted to prove them wrong. The breakthrough came by accident. Ben was testing the equipment late one night when he fell asleep at his desk. His dreams somehow mixed with the quantum field, and when he woke up, the computers were recording strange patterns. The patterns looked like waves of sound, but they weren't sound. They were something else entirely. Meanwhile, on Mars, Captain Amy Walsh was reading reports that made her worry. Human colonies all over the solar system were sending the same strange news. The Zephyrians were acting differently. They had always been cold and distant, but now they seem nervous about something. The Zephyrians have been visiting their sacred sites more often, reported Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the Mars Observation Post. They bring those big crystal machines and perform ceremonies. Sometimes they stay for days just listening to something. Amy had studied everything humans knew about Zephyrian culture. The aliens were very religious. They believed that voices from the center of the galaxy had taught their ancestors how to build spaceships and create their civilization. They called these voices the eternal speakers and treated them like gods. What kind of ceremonies? Amy asked. They set up complex machines that create weird frequencies, Danny explained. Our sensors can't understand most of it, but it's definitely some kind of quantum communication. They act like they're trying to talk to someone very important. Amy made a note to investigate further. Something was happening with the Zephyrians, and she wanted to know what it was. Back on Europa, Ben made another discovery. He decided to test what happened when different humans used his quantum communication system. He asked Carol to speak into the microphone while he monitored the quantum field. Just say anything, Ben told her. Talk about your day, your dreams, whatever comes to mind. Carol started talking about her childhood on Earth, about the farm where she grew up and the stars she used to watch at night. As she spoke, Ben watched the quantum field patterns on his screen. The wavy lines were beautiful, like a complex song written in mathematics. Then something incredible happened. The patterns Carol created were almost identical to signals humans had detected coming from the center of the galaxy. Scientists had been recording these signals for years, but no one understood what they meant. They seemed random, like noise from space. Carol, stop talking, Ben said suddenly. He was staring at the screen with wide eyes. What's wrong? Carol asked. Look at this, Ben said, pointing to the patterns. These frequencies you just created, they match the signals from the galactic core, the ones we've been detecting for decades. Carol leaned closer to the screen. That's impossible. Those signals come from thousands of light years away. Ben started pulling up old files, comparing Carol's patterns to the mysterious signals from space. They weren't exactly the same, but they were incredibly similar. Like two people humming the same song in different keys. What if, Ben said slowly, what if those signals aren't random noise? What if they're communications from other beings like us? Other species that can create these quantum patterns naturally? Carol sat down hard in a chair. You're saying humans can naturally make quantum communication signals? I'm saying maybe we've been doing it all along without knowing it, Ben replied. And maybe we're not the only ones. Ben spent the next week testing his theory. He recorded dozens of humans speaking while connected to the quantum field. Every single person created similar patterns. Old people, young people, men, women, children, they all made the same type of quantum music when their thoughts were amplified. But the real shock came when Ben compared his recordings to something else. Amy Walsh had sent him copies of this Zephyrian ceremony recordings from Mars, then ran them through his analysis program and nearly fell out of his chair. Zephyrians weren't just listening to quantum signals during their ceremonies. They were desperately trying to recreate them. Their complex crystal machines were attempting to copy the exact same patterns that humans made naturally. Ben called Amy immediately. You need to get here right away, he said, and bring everything you have about Zephyrian religion. 3 days. Later, Amy arrived on Europa with a team of experts. Dr. Nina Brooks, a specialist in alien languages, looked at Ben's data with growing excitement. This is incredible, Nina said. According to Zephyrian religious texts, their ancestors received guidance from divine voices that taught them science and technology. They've been trying to recreate those divine communications for thousands of years. And failing, Amy added. Their ceremonies never produce the right patterns. They get close, but it's always artificial. always wrong somehow. Ben nodded. Because they're trying to build machines to do something that requires a living mind, a conscious brain creating thoughts and emotions. Carol was studying the comparison charts. So you're telling me that humans naturally produce the quantum frequencies that the Zephyrians worship as divine messages? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Ben said. And I think I know why the Zephyrians are so nervous lately. They've been detecting quantum communications from our solar system. Communications that match their most sacred religious patterns. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. The aliens who had dismissed humans as primitive were desperately trying to copy something that every human could do, without thinking about it. The voices they worshipped as gods might have been voices just like human voices. We need to test this, Amy said finally, but carefully. If we're right, this changes everything between humans and Zephyrians. Ben looked at his friends and colleagues. They were about to discover something that could either free humanity from the Zephyrian restrictions, or make the aliens see humans as a threat to their entire belief system. There's something else, Ben said quietly. I've been analyzing the timing of those galactic core signals. Some of them seem to respond to each other, like they're having conversations across thousands of light years. Nina's eyes went wide. You mean there might be other species out there, all communicating through quantum consciousness patterns? Maybe, Ben said. And maybe humans just joined the conversation without knowing it. Outside the lab windows, Europa's icy surface reflected the light of distant Jupiter. But Ben wasn't thinking about the cold moon or the giant planet. He was thinking about voices calling across the galaxy, minds reaching out to other minds through the quantum fabric of space itself. Humans had always been good at talking to each other. Now it seemed they might be good at talking to anyone. Dr. Nina Brooks felt her hands shake as she walked onto the Zephyrian diplomatic ship near Mars. She carried a small device hidden in her jacket pocket, Ben Rodriguez's quantum field amplifier. The plan was simple but dangerous. If they were wrong about human quantum communication, they would embarrass themselves. If they were right, they might change everything. Remember, whispered Carol Martinez, who walked beside her, act normal. We're just here for cultural exchange, like we requested. Behind them, Ben carried his equipment in a case marked as translation software. The Zephyrians had agreed to meet with the humans, though they seemed bored by the request. To them, it was probably like letting children visit a museum. High Curator Valtosh waited for them in a large room filled with floating crystals and walls that glowed with soft light. 2 other Zephyrians stood with him, creatures so tall and thin they looked like walking shadows. Their black eyes watched the humans with mild curiosity. Welcome, primitive ones, Valtosh said in his cold voice. You wish to share your simple culture with us? How educational this should be. Nina stepped forward. She had practiced this moment 100 times, but her heart still pounded like a drum. Thank you for meeting with us. We believe that communication is the bridge between all intelligent species. Communication, yes, agreed one of the other Zephyrians, though yours is quite basic. Words and gestures, like children pointing at objects they want. Ben quietly set up his equipment, while Nina kept talking. The quantum field amplifier was hidden inside the translation device case. All he had to do was activate it when Nina started speaking. We have stories, Nina continued, songs and poems that express the deepest thoughts of our people. Perhaps you would like to hear one? Valtosh made a gesture that might have been a shrug. If it pleases you? We have studied many primitive art forms. They can be quite charming in their simplicity. Nina nodded to Ben. He pressed a button on his hidden device. The quantum field amplifier began working, but there was no visible sign. The real test was about to begin. This is a poem about the Stars, Nina said, and began to recite words she had memorized. But these weren't just any words. She had chosen a poem about longing, about reaching across vast distances to touch other minds, about the deep loneliness of space and the joy of finding others who shared the same dreams. As Nina spoke, Ben watched his hidden readings. The quantum field was responding to her voice, her emotions, her thoughts. Patterns flowed from her mind through the device and into the space around them. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Zephyrians listened politely, their faces showing the same mild interest they might show for a pet doing tricks. Then Veltash stopped moving. His large black eyes went wide. His thin body began to tremble. He made a sound deep in his throat that might have been a gasp or a prayer. The other two Zephyrians suddenly dropped to their knees. Their heads touched the floor. One of them began speaking rapidly in their own language, words that sounded like music and wind chimes. Nina kept talking, not sure what was happening, but knowing she had to continue. The poem spoke of ancient wisdom flowing between worlds, of voices that taught and guided, of the eternal connection between all thinking beings. Veltash fell to his knees as well. Tears of silver liquid ran down his face. "The voice," he whispered. "In English. The eternal voice speaks through the small one." Ben's equipment showed quantum patterns flowing through the room, like invisible rivers of light. The frequencies matched exactly what the Zephyrians had been trying to recreate in their religious ceremonies for thousands of years. "Impossible," breathed one of the other Zephyrians. "The sacred frequencies, they come from the primitive being ... Nina finished her poem and stood in silence. The Zephyrians remained on their knees, trembling and whispering prayers in their ancient language. She looked at Ben and Carol, not sure what to do next. "Turn it off," Carol whispered urgently. "Something's wrong." Ben quickly shut down the quantum amplifier. The moment he did, the strange feelings in the room faded. The Zephyrians slowly raised their heads, looking confused and frightened. "What happened?" Veltash demanded, struggling to stand. "The voice of the eternal ... It spoke through you. How is this possible?" Nina's mind raced. They had proven their theory, but now what? The Zephyrians looked at her like she had suddenly grown wings or started breathing fire. "I don't understand," Nina said, trying to sound innocent. "I was just reciting a poem from my world." "No," Veltash said, his voice shaking. "You spoke in the voice that guided our ancestors, the sacred frequencies that built our civilization. You are not primitive. You are ... He struggled for words. "You are touched by the eternal." The other Zephyrians began talking rapidly among themselves. Nina caught some words she recognized. Divine, sacred, impossible, and blessed. Carol stepped forward. "Perhaps there's been some mistake. We're just humans sharing our simple culture, as you said." But Veltash was studying Nina with new eyes. Gone was the bored superiority. Now he looked at her with something like fear and awe mixed together. "You will come with us?" he said suddenly. "The High Council must see this. They must hear the voice speak through you." "That's not necessary," Ben said quickly. "We should return to our ship." "No," Veltash said firmly. "Everything has changed. If the Eternal speaks through your species, then we have made a terrible error. You are not primitive. You are." He paused, as if afraid to say the words. "You may be the blessed ones, our prophecies speak of." Nina felt a chill run down her spine. They had wanted to prove that humans could create quantum communication patterns. They hadn't expected to become objects of alien worship. "We need time to think about this," Carol said, diplomatically. "This is very surprising for us, too." Veltash nodded slowly. "Yes, of course. But you must understand, this changes everything. If your people can speak in the voice of the Eternal, then you are not prisoners in your solar system. You are. He struggled again with the words. You may be our teachers. The three humans exchanged glances. Their plan had worked too well. They had proven that humans could naturally produce the quantum frequencies the Zephyrians worshipped. But instead of earning respect as equals, they had accidentally made themselves seem like gods. We will return to our ship to consider what has happened, Nina said carefully. Perhaps we can meet again soon to discuss this further. Yes, Veltash. Agreed. But know this. Word of what happened here will spread to every Zephyrian world. Some will say you are divine messengers. Others will say it is impossible and demand proof. Still others ... He paused ominously. Others will say you are dangerous and must be destroyed before you destroy our faith. As the humans left the Zephyrian ship, Nina realized they had opened a door they might not be able to close. The universe had just become a much more complicated place. Well, Ben said quietly as they walked back to their shuttle. That went better and worse than I expected, Carol nodded grimly. We proved humans can make quantum communication patterns. But now we have to deal with being seen as either gods or threats. Nina looked back at the massive Zephyrian ship. Inside, she knew. Veltash was probably sending urgent messages to his homeworld. Soon, the entire Zephyrian civilization would know that the primitive humans could do something the aliens had been trying to achieve for thousands of years. Humanity had wanted to prove they deserved respect. Now they might have proven they deserved something much more dangerous. Worship or fear. The test had worked. But Nina wasn't sure if that was good news or bad news for the human race. Captain Kevin Stone had never seen anything like the Zephyrian homeworld. Zephyr Prime was a planet of floating cities and crystal spires that reached toward the clouds. Ships moved through the air like schools of metal fish, and the very atmosphere seemed to hum with energy. But Kevin wasn't here to admire the scenery. 3 days after Nina Brooks had accidentally spoken in what the Zephyrians called the voice of the eternal, the alien High Council had summoned humanity's representatives to their homeworld. The message had been polite but firm. Come now, or face the consequences. This is either going to go very well or very badly, said Ben Rodriguez as their shuttle descended toward the main city. He sat with his quantum communication equipment, ready to demonstrate human abilities if needed. Carol Martinez looked out the window at the thousands of Zephyrians gathering in the streets below. Look at all of them. Word has spread fast. Kevin nodded grimly. Reports from human colonies across the solar system all said the same thing. The Zephyrians were in chaos. Some groups were building shrines to honor humans as divine messengers. Others were arming ships and calling for humanity to be destroyed as false prophets. The alien civilization was tearing itself apart. Their shuttle landed in a vast courtyard surrounded by towers made of what looked like crystallized light. Hundreds of Zephyrians waited in perfect silence, their black eyes fixed on the human ship. Some held flowering branches, a sign of respect. Others carried devices that might have been weapons. High Curator Veltash met them at the shuttle door. The proud alien looked like he had aged decades in just 3 days. His silver skin was pale, and his movements were shaky. Humans, he said formally, the High Council awaits. Please follow me and speak only when asked to speak. There are many here who believe you are either blessed or cursed. Either way, you are dangerous. They walked through corridors filled with floating art and walls that showed moving pictures of Zephyrian history. Kevin saw images of their primitive ancestors looking up at the stars, then learning to build tools and cities. In every image, streams of light came down from the sky. The divine voices that had taught them civilization. The High Council chamber was enormous. 12 ancient Zephyrians sat on platforms that floated in the air around a central speaking area. Each one looked old enough to have seen the birth of stars. Their eyes held the weight of thousands of years. Elder historian Kethvar spoke first. Her voice was like wind through empty caves. Humans of the third planet, we have summoned you to resolve a crisis that threatens our entire civilization. You will answer our questions truthfully, or you will not leave this world alive. Kevin stepped forward. We're here to help solve this crisis, not make it worse. We want peace between our peoples. Peace, said another council member with a bitter laugh. You speak of peace while destroying the faith that has guided us for 50,000 years. Kethvar raised a thin hand for silence. First, you will demonstrate this ability that has caused such chaos. You will speak in the voice of the Eternal, so we may judge if it is real or some form of deception. Ben set up his equipment while Nina prepared to speak. But before she could begin, Kethvar continued talking. However, you should know what you are truly claiming. According to our most sacred records, the voice of the Eternal first spoke to our ancestors when they were primitive beings living in caves. The voice taught them language, mathematics, science, and philosophy. It guided them from barbarism to civilization over thousands of years. She gestured to the walls, which began showing ancient recordings. Kevin saw primitive Zephyrians gathered around glowing crystals, listening to sounds that seemed to come from nowhere. The sounds were beautiful and complex, like music made of mathematics. These are the oldest recordings we possess, Kethvar explained. The actual voice of the Eternal, preserved for 50,000 years. Every Zephyrian knows these sacred sounds. We have built our entire religion around trying to understand and recreate them. Nina looked nervous. We don't want to mock your religion. We're just trying to understand what's happening. Then understand this, said another council member harshly. If you can truly recreate the voice of our gods, then either you are divine, beings masquerading as primitives, or our gods were beings like you. Either possibility destroys everything we believe about ourselves and the universe. Ben finished setting up his quantum amplifier. We're ready to demonstrate. Kethvar nodded. Proceed. But know that if this is some form of trickery, you will die here today. Nina began to speak, and Ben activated the quantum field amplifier. Her words carried the same emotional weight as before. Longing, hope, the desire to connect across vast distances. The quantum patterns flowed through the room like invisible rivers. The reaction from the council was immediate. Several of the ancient Zephyrians fell from their floating platforms. Others began chanting in their old language. One started crying, tears of silver. But Kethvar remained still, listening intently. When Nina finished, the old historian was quiet for a long moment. Play the ancient recordings, she said finally. The room filled with the sounds of the original voice of the Eternal, the divine communications that had guided Zephyrian civilization. Kevin listened carefully, comparing them to what Nina had just produced. They were nearly identical. The quantum signature patterns match within acceptable margins, Ben reported, reading his instruments. The frequencies, the emotional content, even the mathematical structure, they're the same type of communication. Kethvar looked at the humans with eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness. Ben, our civilization was built on a lie. The gods we have worshipped for 50,000 years were not gods at all. They were beings like you, organic creatures with the ability to project consciousness through quantum fields. Not a lie, Kevin said gently. Your ancestors received real guidance from real intelligence. The beings who helped you were probably trying to share knowledge and wisdom across the galaxy. But they were not eternal or divine, another council member said bitterly. They were mortal, like us, like you. Ben spoke up. Maybe that makes it more wonderful, not less. Think about it. Conscious beings reaching across thousands of light years, just to help other species grow and learn. That's not divine, but it's pretty amazing. Kethfer activated more recordings. We have studied these communications for thousands of years. They come from many different sources across the galaxy. Some respond to others, as if they are having conversations over vast distances and time periods. Carol leaned forward with interest. You mean there's a whole network of species communicating through quantum consciousness patterns? It appears. So, Kethfer confirmed. And now we know that your species has naturally developed this ability. You are not primitive at all. You are part of an ancient community of minds that spans the galaxy. But not all the council members were pleased by this revelation. Elder Zealot Morthic rose from his platform, his eyes burning with anger. This is blasphemy, he declared. These creatures claim to possess the sacred abilities of the Eternal. They mock our faith and corrupt our youth with false promises. They must be destroyed before their lies spread further. Other council members began arguing loudly. Some demanded that humans be worshipped as divine messengers. Others wanted them studied as miraculous beings. Still others, like Morthic, called for their immediate destruction. Kevin realized that proving human abilities had not solved the crisis. It had made everything worse. The Zephyrian civilization was splitting apart as different groups chose different ways to interpret what they had learned. Stop, Kethfer commanded, and the chamber fell silent. Fighting among ourselves serves no purpose. We must decide what this means for our people and for the galaxy. She looked directly at Kevin. Your species has given us a great gift and a great burden. You have shown us that we are not alone in the universe, that consciousness itself is more wonderful and mysterious than we ever imagined. But you have also shattered the faith that held our civilization together for 50,000 years. Kevin felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humanity had wanted freedom from Zephyrian restrictions. Instead, they had accidentally become the center of an alien religious crisis that could tear apart one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. What happens now? He asked. Kethfer looked around at her fellow council members, then back at the humans. Now we must all learn to live in a universe where the divine and the mortal are not as different as we thought. And we must decide whether that makes existence more meaningful or less. Outside the council chamber, Kevin could hear the sounds of crowds gathering. Some were chanting prayers. Others were shouting demands for war. The future hung in the balance, and somehow humans had become the key to everything. Commander Ryan Clark watched the warning lights flash red across his control panel. 3 Zephyrian warships were moving toward the human research station in neutral space, and their weapons were charging. They're not responding to our calls, reported Lieutenant Tommy Garcia from the communication station. I think these are the Zealot faction ships. Ryan had expected this. For 2 weeks, a Zephyrian civilization had been tearing itself apart. Some groups wanted to worship humans as divine beings. Others wanted to study them as miraculous creatures. But the Zealots, led by Elder Morthic, wanted to destroy humanity before their false divine abilities could corrupt more Zephyrian believers. Dr. Foster, how much more time do you need? Ryan called to the research lab. Dr. Helen Foster looked up from her work with Ben Rodriguez and a team of Zephyrian scientists who had chosen to work with humans instead of fighting them. We're close to a breakthrough, she said. But we need at least another hour. We might not have an hour, Ryan said as the Zephyrian warships moved closer. The research station was humanity's attempt to solve the crisis peacefully. Helen and Ben were working with moderate Zephyrians to prove that quantum consciousness communication wasn't unique to humans or divine beings. If they could show that any intelligent species could learn this ability, it might calm the religious panic. But the Zealots didn't want calm. They wanted humans dead. Ryan called out Julie Morgan from the navigation station. "We've got another problem. More ships are approaching from the other direction." Ryan looked at the sensors and felt his heart sink. These new ships belonged to the Zephyrian faction that wanted to capture humans for worship. They were coming to protect the divine messengers from the zealots. "So we've got one group that wants to kill us, and another that wants to lock us." "Up as gods," Ryan muttered. "Great." In the research lab, Helen was working frantically with her